So let me invite to the floor Madame Feliz Unsal, who is the head of the Structural Policy and Research at the Economics Department of OECD, to introduce the next keynote speaker. Feliz is coming, her birthplace is across the Aegean, and we are always delighted to welcome people who are neighbors. Thank you, Feliz. Thank you for coming. Let's give her an applause, please.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Tassomanos. I'm very happy to be here today with you. In this, I'm truly honored to introduce Alvaro Pereira, OECD Chief Economist, Head of Economics Department, and G20 Finance Deputy. Alvaro's very distinguished career includes impactful roles in economic research, government services, and policy advising. We are especially grateful to have Alvaro today with us today, given that he has a very hands-on experience as the head of the director of country studies and also as a thought leader in the policy branch of the OECD. And even prior to that, he was a Minister of Economy and Employment in Portugal between 2011 and 2013. Alvaro has also taught in Canada and also in University of York in England. He has a PhD from Simon Fraser University and has published numerous books and papers in various topics. On a personal note, I am also fortunate to be one of his students in University of York, and I have the privilege to work with him now at the OECD. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Alvaro for his keynote speaker. Thank you.
Kalimera. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being here in beautiful Chania and beautiful Greece. In particular, it's rewarding because you can see that Greece is coming back and is coming back strong and showing the world that even after going through a difficult period, you can turn things around and make the country not only competitive, but also a lot more attractive to investors. So first of all, I would like to thank the government, and in particular the governor of Chania, the Prit, and thank you very much, and the mayor and the ministers as well. Also the Delphi Forum, which is an esteemed partner. The Crete Center, it's for us very, very important. I'll explain why in a second. But I would like to first thank the two ambassadors that were responsible for this. First, George Prevalakis, who obviously had an important role to get here, and also the current ambassador, George Pagoulatos, who's been a driving force to the center and a tour de force inside the OECD to make this happen. So I would like to thank them very much. Also like to thank our colleagues from the Economics Department and the Labor Directorate. And with that, I can start, as I said, my presentation. And the Deputy Secretary General here, the fact that is here, it shows how important we think this is for the OECD. If you think about, as I said, if I would come 10 years before, I was minister in Portugal when the Troika period was happening also in Portugal. So I feel very strongly about when I come to Greece because I feel very personal. It feels very personal to me. But it was thanks to the reforms, a lot of sacrifices, but also it's thanks to the reforms that Greece is able to turn the corner. Having said that, it's also important to say that we face significant long-term challenges around the world. In particular, as we just heard from previous speakers, AI and digitalization, we know this is going to be a big one. I'll come back to this at the end of my presentation. Climate change, in terms of mitigation and adaptation. Sometimes we forget that one of the big trends that is happening today is protectionism or potential rise of protectionism, and it could get a lot worse. And so certainly this is something we need to pay attention. In particular, we need to leave markets open and be able to find a way of foster the multilateral system. And the last one is aging. And I would like to start saying that, listen, sometimes we take a view of aging that, oh my gosh, we're all getting old and so on. Listen, we should celebrate. You know, it's not, you know, one of the things that we should celebrate is that we are getting older. Remember, 50, 60 years ago, you would get to 60, 65, you know, usually retire at 60, 65, you'll be extinguished. And so that means that you have, you know, you have a life that is relatively long, but literally getting to 80, 90, 100 was almost virtually impossible. Just to give you an idea how radical this is, the change, in 1965, in many OECD countries, the most common age of death was 1, right? So a lot of babies died in 1965, okay? That was the most common age of death in many OECD countries, including the most advanced. Today, the most common age to die is 87 years old, okay? 80 plus, and in countries like Japan and the UK and others, 87, 88 years old. Just to give you an idea, also, a child born in the United States is more than 50% chance to get to 95. 50% chance to get to 95, okay? In Japan, 1 in 10, 70 years old, 70, 1 in 10, 10%, will get to 100 and plus. And in fact, if you look at the fast-growing aging population is really the 100 and plus. You know, that's the fast aging group right now. And just to give an idea, in 40 years ago, in 1990, there were about 95,000 people aged 100 or more. Right now, there's more than 500,000. Remember, you know, when most of us were born, it was very rare to get somebody get to 100. Right now, is getting more and more common, which is very good. Okay. So anyway, let's remember that it is true that. Across the OECD countries, older age populations are soaring, but it's also important to say that we are also doing this with much healthier lives. And what has been accomplished in the past few decades of having aging populations, it's nothing short of a big achievement of humanity, and it's nothing short of a miracle for our scientific and our medical professions. I think that's quite important to say. You can say that, as I said, living longer is certainly an achievement. This graph basically tells you that how I cannot see the graphs from here, so if you could switch the board, it'll be fantastic because it's too far away for me to see it there. But this graph basically tells you that living longer and healthier lives is a great achievement. But basically, this tells you how much we are, in terms of the life expectancy with and or without health impairments, how much this life expectancy has increased. And you can see that in many countries, this increase has been quite expensive, very large. So this basically, there's substantial increase in life expectancy in almost OECD countries, and more than 2/3 of these additional years of life expectancy are spent in good life. So not only we are living longer, but also, thank you very much. That's very kind. But also we're living also much healthier lives. Next graph is basically telling that not only this is happening, but also working lives are lengthening. So this graph is basically telling you on the left for males and on the right for females, telling you for different cohorts of populations, what is the labor participation. You can see for younger people, especially the part that was with the working age population for males. Sorry, I'm just going to get the PPT, otherwise I cannot see it. So I'm getting, one of the problems of old age is that you don't see very well. And so, and it gets worse. This is something that even though we should celebrate aging, this is one thing that I don't think we should celebrate. I certainly don't celebrate it. I apologize, but I need to see the PPT. So you can see that the male employment basically for the 30 to 55 or 54 is relatively constant, but you can see that both for the 60 plus and for the 65 plus year old, for males, participation is starting to rise. And if you look to the right, it's even more dramatic, because you can see that one of the big achievements in the past few years was that female employment has increased dramatically. And in fact, we have a recent paper of the OECD from the economics department, together with others, that shows closing the gender gaps, the employment gender gaps, leads to a significant boost in growth. And this is partly why it's, a lot more women are participating in the labor force of all ages. And you can see that this is an important trend going forward. However, of course, even though we should celebrate aging, there are many challenges related to the aging of the population. We know that working age populations will shrink. This is a graph that basically tells you how much we expect that population will shrink per country between 2020 and 2050. You can see that Korea, Lithuania, Latvia, and Italy will have very strong shrinkage of the working age population, more than 25–30%. This is a direct hit on growth, because when your working age population goes down, that means if you don't compensate it by increases in productivity, you're going to have a direct hit on growth. You can also see that in certain countries like Israel, Australia, and Mexico, they are expected to have an increase in population, but for the big generality of the countries, this is not the case. Another thing that was highlighted before is that dependency ratios will grow, which means basically the percentage of people that are of older age, 65 plus, people, together compared to the working age population, will be affected. And so this dependency ratio will grow. The dots show you how the dependency ratio is expected to be in 2050. And the bars basically tell you what is right now. In every single country, the dependency ratio will grow, which will definitely have an impact on growth. And in fact, the next slide tells you exactly that demographic trends will depress GDP per capita unless we are able to revive productivity, unless we are able to bring higher employment rates, and if they'll increase. And so basically, when you calculate GDP per capita, this is what the formula is on the right, you need to take into account the working age population share, the share of the people that are working, but also you need to take into account the ratio of workers to the working age population and labor productivity. And so unless you have this, we are able to revert the demographic trends, unless you compensate them by increasing productivity or an increase in employment rate, you'll have a big increase in GDP per capita. You can see countries like Spain, or Korea, if they don't do anything, the hit on GDP per capita is going to be very, very large, more than 20%. Just imagine, Greece had a major crisis where you had, what it feels to have a decrease in GDP per capita of 5–10%. Now imagine 20%, okay? It's a huge hit, okay? So, it's definitely a big issue that we need to take into account. Not only that, but also another thing that we know, that the consequence of the aging, if nothing happens, again, as I said, get back, I'll try to tell you that this is if nothing happens, okay? But if nothing happens, a consequence is going to be, right now, debt levels all across the OECD are fairly high. And in fact, not only that, the debt levels are high, but the spending pressures are even higher. So right now we have the spending pressures for defense, spending pressures to spend on the green transition, and also on the aging costs related to pensions and healthcare. And so we calculated in this graph that tells you that's the green line is if without aging costs. But if you add the aging costs, which as you should, you see that public debt on the OECD will tend to increase fairly dramatic, which means that will become explosive unless something changes. That's why it's so important to have these policies for the so-called longevity society. I would like to start with a quote from a book that you should read if you can, if you're interested on these issues. It's a book by Andrew Scott called The Longevity Imperative. It was published this year. And Andrew Scott tells, delivering a longevity dividend, which means that he believes that we can use the silver economy to boost growth. So delivering a longevity dividend by raising our productivity over a longer life require 3 sets of government policies. First, increasing retirement age. Second, raising the proportion of people working in the years running up to retirement. And third, boosting the productivity of all the workers. So what it means is, usually governments, are working mostly on the first one, increasing the retirement age, putting the retirement age linked to life expectancy. That's important. But what he's saying is that besides this, you need to bring people that are in working age conditions, but they're not working. So they need to go back to work if possible, or at least to raise the proportion of these people. And also you need to increase the productivity of all the workers. So what are, according to the OECD, the policies that can support aging society? First, as you'll see in a second, the trends in terms of fertility, the decline in fertility was so sharp. And remember, it takes 20, 30 years to catch up to the fertility trends. Even if you are able to reverse fertility right now, which in many countries is going to be very difficult. Just to give an example, in here it's 1.2, 1.3, if I remember, but in countries like Korea, it's 0.7, okay? So for the Koreans to turn things around, it's going to take a huge increase in fertility, okay? And you never know if this is feasible or not. And so even if you're able to do the miracle of raising fertility rates to 2.1, that will still lead you an issue that you need to mitigate at least the next few decades, because the population will decline and the working age population will decline. So what can you do? Well, governments can create the environment for societies to thrive. It means that we need to mitigate the impact, but also we need to adapt. In particular, and I'll come back to this with a few graphs, reduce the gap between statutory and effective retirement ages to contain public spending. We also think that it's important to reform tax and pension systems to combine pension and work incomes, but also healthy aging and improve efficiency and equity in healthcare. Ensure effective integration of immigrants. Of course, all these things are sometimes easier said than done. And particularly sometimes we don't work in many of the issues that we should. And so it's important to improve, and especially it's important to understand what are the best practices in these areas. Mobilize existing resources in all age groups, and promote adoption of productive enhancing technology. In particular, we think that it's quite important that policy that will be able to bring more healthy working life conditions and also a boost in productivity includes, for example, lifelong learning. Just to give an idea, suppose that, as I told you before, a few years ago, a few decades ago, you're supposed to live until 65. After 60, you retire at 60, so you have 5 years more or less in your life. But if you live until 100, then you might think you're 50 or you're 50 something, and you think, okay, I have still half of my life ahead of me, literally. Shall I continue in my career? Shall I change trajectory? Shall I do something that I've been doing a job, but now I really want to pursue my passion? If you live up to 100, you'll be able to do it. And so what you can do, go back to school, do or use lifelong learning and training, and to do perhaps short courses or whatever you want to do, and then you restart your career. Okay? So if you have much longer lives, you'll be able to do that. That's what I mean. So lifelong learning is going to become way more important than it is right now. But also we think it's very important promoting counseling for older job seekers, fostering age-friendly working conditions. For example, flexible working time arrangements. Right now with the pandemic, one thing that working from home is something that became very common. We also need to harness the benefits of age-diverse teams. So, if you have much older workers working with very young workers, how can they complement each other? How can we do this? And also fighting age-related discrimination. So we think this is going to be very important to have healthy workers, but also people bringing back some of the older workers that want to continue to work, but they need to find the environment that is appropriate for them as well. So some of these policies that I mentioned, that is quite important. So this graph is telling you that effective retirement ages and statutory, so what people effectively retire, and what are the retirement age that is statutory or legal, what is the difference? And what we know is that the statutory retirement age and the legal and the effective retirement age usually are very different. And you think, well, why is this happen? Well, partly because sometimes a lot of people do early retirement, but quite often in company restructurings or other type of events in the companies, very often people retire early. And what happens is that usually, and a lot of research has shown, if you retire or if you stop working at 50 something, usually it usually takes a lot longer for you to get back to work. So first of all, important to reduce the gap between the statutory and effective retirement ages. This is going to be quite important to reduce fiscal pressures. But also we think that it's quite important to promote healthy aging and improve efficiency and equity in healthcare. This graph basically tells you that what's the percentage of the population that rates their own health as either poor or very poor. On the left, you can see that the lowest quintile is the poorest, and the highest quintile is the richest part of our societies. And so we can see the green dots basically is people that usually the poorest, so usually they also tend to have physical works and difficult conditions at work. So you can see that a lot of people like in Hungary, Slovakia, and so on, you have almost 50% of the people that rate their own health as very unhealthy or not in great condition. But if you look at in the same countries, people that have higher education that don't have jobs that are so strenuous, you can see that this goes down to 30% or so. In the OECD, about 25% report bad health, but the poorest populations, but the lowest, well, the richest population is about 10%. On the right-hand side, it basically ranks also by education. And high education will be the orange dots, and the green dots are the lower education, so basically less educated. And so what you can see also a huge difference, huge inequalities that exist between how they report their health by education. So you can see that people with higher education tend to report their own health as much better than people with less levels of education, partly because of the type of jobs that they have. And so we think reducing this type of inequalities is going to be quite important for people to continue to work and to be able to have healthy working lives going forward. Another issue that we think we need to invest is on home care. And this is something that happens in many countries, but not in all. So this graph basically tells you the percentage of long-term care spending, whether you're using mostly nursing homes or using hospitals or using home care and or using households. And you can see that varies dramatically per country, but we think that is very important. If people are living so much more, and if they want them to have a bigger, higher well-being, it's quite important to invest in home care so that people feel happier and are able to have healthier lives going forward. Some people also mention that an issue that is quite important is immigration. Immigration per se is not going to be enough to reverse the trend in fertility, okay, the decline in fertility. But you can also see that immigration is important, at least in the short run, to stabilize the situation. This graph basically tells you that in Lithuania, Latvia, Greece, Mexico, Poland, and Portugal were countries that in the past, this is from 2013 to 2019, lost part of their population. Some people were mentioning earlier, because of the crisis, a lot of, especially younger people, left Greece. The same thing happened in my own country. And it's difficult to bring them back, right? So when they leave, it's difficult to bring them back. But, you know, it's important. I enjoyed hearing the minister saying, like, we are going through aggressive policies to try to bring them back, which I think is quite important. The most important thing is to have a thriving economy. You know, if the economy is growing, if the economy is doing well, together with policies from the government helps quite a lot. But we think that in terms of immigration, usually can also help to bring back the people that left this country or other countries. But you know, foreign immigration is also important to go forward and to be able to reduce the impacts of aging. And the next graph shows you why. So if you want to, in order to stabilize the old age dependency ratio, that's the black line, then you need to have immigration of about 2% a year, which is much higher than we have right now in the OECD countries. On the other hand, the dotted line, the red one, is basically telling you what's the average net migration rate between 2000 and 2020, which is about 0.2, 0.1, depends on the country. In order to prevent a decline in working age population, you need to get to 0.3. Okay, so in most OECD countries, you're still far away a little bit to stabilize the working age population. And if you really want to stabilize the old age dependency ratio, then we are really far away. What this means is that per se, immigration is going to be important to reverse some of the declines in population because of the fertility decline, but it's not going to be enough. Or at least in order for us to be able to reverse the old age dependency ratio, you need to have levels of immigration that we have not seen in most countries. In some countries, yes, if you think about Canada, and at least recently, and the United States, but in most countries, this does not happen. Next graph is a bit complicated, but I'll try to explain what this is. Basically, this graph tells you what's the percentage in GDP per capita, what's expected with the aging of the population. So the dots, what you can see per country, is how much you expect that the loss from population aging, okay? So the dots tells you if nothing happens, this is what the dots in population aging. The other, the columns basically tell you, the green is basically potential gain from 50 to 64 age group. So basically the group that is close to retirement but not there yet. The red and the purple are potential. The purple is the potential employment gain in 30 to 49, and the red is potential employment from 65 to 74. What this is telling you is basically if nothing happens, then you get this big decline in GDP per capita that you can see in the dots. But if you start persuading people to work in these populations, okay, so either if you are from 30 to 49, which is the purple, as I said, or if you are from the 50 plus or something, if you persuade some of them to come back, the potential is that one, is the one that you see in the column. So, for example, since we are in Greece, we can say that we are expected that if nothing happens, there'll be a decline in 14% in GDP per capita in Greece. But you can compensate this if you bring some 65 to 74 years old coming back to work, doing not really the same type of work, but perhaps different careers or something like that. The same thing happens if you have, so this is the biggest potential for Greece in this case, but also you can see from 50 to 64 age group, there's a significant gain to be have, and the same thing for younger people. This is even more noticeable if you go to female, because in many countries, look at, for example, Turkey, or you look at, you have the same thing in Italy. A lot of females, the female employment is much lower. And this happens in populations like, 30 to plus, 30 to 50 something, or 50 to 60. So basically, if you are able to bring them back to work, or at least to persuade them to bring them back to work, you'll be able to offset partly the decline of the labor force and the impact on what you have in productivity and economic growth. So just to sum up, remember, what are we saying here is there's huge challenges related to aging, fiscal, but also in terms of productivity. We're saying that, but we should not take aging as a negative event, because as I said, we should celebrate aging. And in particular, there are ways that we're able to reverse and to compensate some of the aging costs that we are going to incur, okay? Having longer working lives for people that want to work. Of course, it depends on the type of job that they have. Also, in particular, persuading people that are out of the labor force and use them to the full potential, especially in terms of female employment, which we think is quite important. And also, we think that it's very important to be able to invest in productivity enhancing reforms so that you're able to bring productivity. And with that, I would like to finish. That's something that is important. Aging can do something that we think it is quite important. Since we are going to have a lot less people working, economists say that, well, very likely what the people will respond and firms will respond by inventing labor-saving innovations. And in fact, we think that aging likely will speed up the adoption of the technology. And you can see in this graph, this is already happening in certain countries. Look at South Korea and Germany, in which aging is significant in these countries, and you can see that the adoption of robots was bigger than in other countries. There is a positive correlation with this, and in particular, we think that artificial intelligence in the context of aging societies will be able to bring a significant increase in productivity. In fact, we have a paper that will come out this week at the OECD that shows that we estimate that AI will lead to an increase in labor productivity between 0.4 and 0.9%. Well, I think that labor productivity is growing between 1 and 1.5%. So we're talking about a big boost in productivity, labor productivity. The same thing for TFP, which will increase between 0.26 and 0.6%. And so we think that artificial intelligence in the context of the aging societies might be able to provide a significant boost in productivity growth. I would like to end with basically with the work that the OECD has been doing throughout the years regarding aging. We've worked extensively in many countries on how to tackle lower fertility and how to boost fertility at the same time, how to be basically dealing with the longevity society and the aging societies. We did this for Korea and Japan recently, but also we've been, our labor directorate and other directors of the OECD have been working on reports that promote active aging in Lithuania. Remember, active aging means in order to have healthy lives, you know, to people keeping active and becoming more active, both if they're working or if they're not working, but they have healthier lives going forward, which obviously have a big impact. So summing up, what I would like to say is, first of all, important to mention that why is this CRIT Center so important? Why is this first forum so important? It's because aging and the longevity question is one of the big keys, big key questions that we're going to have in the next few decades. We tend to give a lot more attention to climate, rightfully so, because it's a huge challenge. But sometimes we forget that there is issue of that we are all getting older. And in fact, the society is getting much older than before. This is not all bad. In fact, it's good. So we should celebrate it. That means that because of our technical change, because of medicinal advances, we are able to live much longer, healthier lives. That's good. On the other hand, we know there are fiscal issues, pension issues, labor issues that are related to this aging society. In particular, with the age dependency ratios getting up in virtually every single country, this will have an impact for many countries in terms of fiscal sustainability, in terms of sustainability of pension systems, but also will have an impact on the decline of the working age populations. How can we make sure that this doesn't happen and we enjoy more productive and stronger societies? Well, we need to go what Scott was mentioning, the longevity dividend. How do you do this? You do this by be able to extend working lives of some people, investing in healthy working lives as well going forward, but also investing in productivity enhancing reforms and technologies that is able to be around, to get the situation around. And with that, I'll just like to say that I look forward for the discussion, not only today, but the next few years of the CRIT Center. In this, that is one of the most important issues that we are facing, as I said, in the next few decades. Thank you.
Yeah, Minister, what can I say? Excellent presentation, very well delivered. We thank you deeply for this. Thank you very much, OECD. Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you very much.